Hello, my name is Shachaf Kiransu, candidate number 5076, and this is my creative critical reflection discussing my magazine, Radiant Living. Now, there are three main publications that I drew inspiration from. I was debating which one I should have most similarity to. These are all kinds of magazines under the genre of beauty. However, I opted to combine elements of all eco-friendly, health and wellness, and fashion into a lifestyle-esque magazine. The first question asks, how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? And while I'll be discussing the social dynamics later on, allow me to focus in on the conventions I utilized. Although Vogue is a more high-fashion beauty magazine, I was still inspired by the unique design features. The left publication utilizes an overlay technique, as seen with the models covering the masthead of the magazine. The right publication uses a basic convention I've noticed through a multitude of magazine covers, which is including text around the borders of the cover page. Now, Cosmopolitan was first published as a fashion and entertainment magazine in 1886. By 1965, however, its content range has evolved and it soon became a women's magazine. Along with Women's Health, it is the most popular publication for women in the US, as can be seen. It provides fashion tips, healthy eating advice, and relationship tips, which are all concepts I was interested in when designing my magazine. However, these publications tend to heavily sexualize women, all while targeting their views. They display them with revealing clothing and heavy makeup, as seen in these two images. Cover lines focusing on sexualizing women behavior and altering themselves and their bodies to fit the standards of others. These magazines push a notion that the audience must achieve the models, which are usually celebrities, as seen with Katy Perry, filtered and flawless looks. This overall creates unrealistic expectations for women and thus negatively affects them, especially those of a younger age whom are easily influenced by media content. So, taking into account these conventions that I did and did not want to follow based on my research, along with the content I learned over the school year, I utilized a combination of standard and challenged conventions in my magazine's cover. As can be seen, I included the masthead, date line, selling lines, cover lines, and a barcode, per standard. Some other features I noticed as a pattern between many publications were sizing the text differently, based on its significance, and using numbers and bolded words to exaggerate and thus draw the readers into the magazine further. Boxed in green is a pull quote I incorporated into the cover. Although this isn't unusual, as it was done with the Prevention and Elle magazine seen earlier, it challenges the convention that a pull quote must come from a celebrity. I didn't include any big name on the cover, making it a celebrity magazine, because I strive for this to be a fully relatable magazine to the average person. So the quote almost speaks to the audience at eye level rather than it coming from someone superior. Also, within every cover seen thus far, whenever the main image is a full body shot, the background is consistently plain colored to focus in on the model. However, I challenge the styled convention with a candid shot, as the model herself not only speaks to the audience, but the serene background does too. She's also dressed in white and fully covered, turned with her back, making almost a silhouette, challenging the provocative image trend. The second question asks, how does your product engage with audiences and how would it be distributed as a real media text? And now, Alert is the #1 most popular beauty magazine in the US, with Vogue coming in a close second as ranked by FeedSpot. So, both of these publications' demographics reveal a similar pattern, as you can see. In order to establish how my magazine engages with audiences, we must first establish who my targeted audience really is. Now, this is where some standard conventions are challenged yet again, because as can be seen, the average age range viewing beauty magazines is 25 to 34 years of age. However, my target is women ages 15 to 25, meaning teenagers and young adults. This demographic is far more receptive to trends and may be more influenced from the media, thus I decided to target them instead. In my table of contents, I used intentional word choices to appeal to this younger age. Many of the story headlines I chose have alliteration in them, such as the one I chose for my feature story titled Going Filter Free. I also used demanding words to begin the descriptions of each feature. That way, rather than being invited, the audience is being told to join the journey and continue reading the magazine. As for my feature story, I used a young model to appeal to the audience. She has what is nowadays called clean girl makeup, or minimal yet glowy makeup to enhance rather than cover her skin. Her hair is also slicked back and her shirt is lightly colored to match the limit of 3 colors used in the spread, that being green, pink, and yellow, for a cohesive feel. Keywords such as Instagram and selfie, as boxed in black, relate back to the audience. I also included a sidebar to talk about the possible effects of the feature might lend to. This is where the more social issue of the adolescent mental health comes in, as it may decline with the rising use of social media applications. The sidebar also offers solutions to the rising issue, explaining how social media dynamics are evolving to better fit these problems. Now, as you can see on the screen, these issues are indeed not fictional, but take place consistently in all sorts of headlines. Whether it relates to body dysmorphia, cyberbullying, or even overuses of social media, it overall has been negatively affecting young individuals to a great extent. However, like discussed, as of recent times, social media posts have begun to empower people rather than strip them of it. Positive messages, diversity, and new restrictions of social media are all increasing on these applications, slowly but surely, along with the mental health of the affected individuals. Well, to be fair, whether we like it or not, social media remains distinguished among the population. So, Radiant Living will have its own social media accounts in order to publicize the company. Now, Vogue Magazine's Instagram currently has 48.3 million followers. Having social media accounts besides the website itself allows publications to post exclusive content, whether in video or photo format, to appeal to those looking for fresh content. Achieving this with my own magazine would allow for it to reach a far wider demographic, and at a quicker pace as well. Now, Kinfolk is an indie magazine company that I briefly looked into at the beginning of my research. It covers all sorts of topics divided by sections, with one tab, for example, discussing fashion. The website offers the ability to subscribe to the magazine, having a feature I would include on my own website as well. It would serve as a central hub for all users to view online articles, subscription options, additional content, and announcements. This way, my magazine is accessible at any day at any time, using a laptop, desktop, phone, tablet, etc. But of course, another source of distribution would be a physical printed subscription. Subscribers would have a magazine at their door per new edition. My magazine could also be sold in grocery stores or bookstores, as seen in the clip from Barnes & Noble's. Physical copies could even be sold through online legitimate websites, such as Amazon, to maximize profits as well as accessibility to all people. The third question asks, how did your production skills develop throughout the project? Prior to conducting any research, I made a preliminary magazine to test where my knowledge and skills were this far. These were made using Canva, the digital platform I had most experience with at this point. There are some features I included in these that I decided to exclude in my final magazine. This is because they either did not follow conventions in magazines or just didn't achieve the goals of my specific publication. This includes using many fonts at random and a featured celebrity, since I opted out of doing so. Same goes for my preliminary feature spread, where I placed the folio in the wrong spot on the page and I didn't edit out any of the issues to the full extent. As a class assignment, we practiced photography and videography. In this first trial, I opted to use natural lighting with no specific method, just to see the results that I could come up with. However, after studying more basic standards of photography, I took these photographs. Again, I used natural lighting, which is what I ended up doing for my final cover photo too. I attempted to utilize the rule of thirds in these full body shots, practicing these magazine photography conventions. For the feature spread image, although it was styled and not candid, I still wanted to have a natural feel. Thus, I had the model move frequently and pose in all sorts of ways. In this case, I used a light source to brighten the model and dim the rest of the lights in the room to add shadows. After playing around with my setup, there were still some shadows remaining behind the model. However, I enjoyed them because they almost reflect the shadows of the headline in the feature spread. I also practiced taking product shots using a bird's eye angle and dim lighting to capture the image. And the fourth and final question asks, how did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online in this project? The hardware I used, once again, was a ring light and flashlight because I felt as if the room was far too dim on its own. I used my phone camera, the iPhone 12 Pro, because it was most accessible to me. I learned about the settings it offers, firstly turning on the grid so that way I can measure out where the model is placed. I also use the zoom out mode when taking practice shots as boxed in green, as well as portrait mode and true tone in order to balance out my photos and see what works and what doesn't. I learned a lot about what my basic iPhone has to offer in general, since I was able to take near professional level photos on it and can now apply this to other areas of my life too. I also used online articles to guide me through my research, as well as specific inquiries I had about what steps should be done. Although I originally practiced product images from a bird's eye perspective, I opted to use an eye-level angle and cut out the background using the editing software I used, just as this advice gave me. As an individual in the 15 to 25 age range myself, I'm also unfortunately heavily invested in social media. So I thought I would take advantage of this and use YouTube as a platform to educate myself. I watch tutorials from reliable users having a multitude of subscribers on how to use a software to edit the magazine itself, that being InDesign and Lightroom, from the Adobe Creative Cloud. I had never used these previously, but found myself adopting rather quickly since the tutorials were clear and easy to follow. Using InDesign, I made a design of my own, then continued to alter it many times, as can be seen here. My first arrangement had much blocked in white space, so after playing around with the software and changing the format, I designed a table of contents checking all the boxes. Using Lightroom was even less of a struggle for me, since I often edit my photos in my iPhone Photos editing options. So I adjusted highlights and shadows to contrast one another, often lowering whites as well depending on my thoughts of the photo. And finally, my online record, the Lux Chronicles of my journey, has been some of the greatest help. Although my magazine is less luxury than I originally anticipated when naming the blog, noting all choices I made and why, seeing what struggles I faced and how I overcame them, and just overall reflecting on the amount of content I learned inspires me to make more in the future. Now, overall, Radiant Living just provides readers relatable content, whether it be advice, tips, hacks, and confidence. I learned a lot about what media production and the processes are like, and I'm so glad that I can now look back on this magazine. So I really hope you enjoyed my experience as much as I did. Thank you.